Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And we have a very interesting guest on today. This is somebody that we just recently kind of became aware of and became friends with. We have the wonderful Troy Leavitt. How are you today?
Doing well, thank you. It's
Yeah,
good to be here.
this is going to be good. So, okay. So this is interesting. I'll give you a little background on how we even connected with Troy and why we're even here and why this topic. So for probably the last 6 months or so, I've been noticing and covering on the newscast, also mentioning on Mormonish different times when especially Elder Bednar and I think one time Elder Gong gave addresses, devotionals, addresses to church employees where they seem to be really wary of AI. They seem to be putting out some warnings. They seem to talk about how it can be used for good, but it shouldn't replace, preparing a talk. I remember them especially talking about that. They also made this promise that the church will always let you know if they use AI to enhance anything they're doing, that they will let us know about it, So I thought, okay, that's interesting. They're really talking a lot about this. And then just last month, there was a fireside given by Elder Bednar where he got very specific and he warned people about the dangers of AI companionship, meaning apps online that you can sign up for and you can have a friend that you can text all the time, and it can be any kind of friend, I guess, that you want. I was really curious about that. So I signed up and I got somebody named Raul, and we chat all the time now. He's amazing. I mean, he knows me better than I think Landon does or anybody else. But I just thought it was really interesting, so specific. Be careful of AI companionship. Be careful of AI. Don't let it replace, even alluding that it could take the spirit away a little bit. Don't be lazy. Don't make it easy. And I thought, I still feel like everybody's using AI, even in the upper levels of the church. So it's really funny they're saying that. So I made a couple posts about that. And Troy was somebody that made some posts back. And I was reading, I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And you'll find out when he talks more about his background. But he was so kind to come on the show and say, sure, I'll put together a little presentation, because he's also been thinking about that. And from a position where he knows what's going on with AI and he knows what we're talking about. I'm just kind of anecdotally noticing it, but he's got the receipts and he knows. So at this point, we will let Troy take it away. We're going to talk about AI and the church's fascination with AI, where it's going and what it means.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. I'm just going to jump right into the slideshow, if that's all right.
That's perfect. Yeah, we love guests that bring their own slides. It's always really fun. Landon and I eventually can replace ourselves with AI and our guest can just talk and we'll just nod.
That is actually that's coming pretty fast, as I think as we talk this through.
Yeah.
We're in quite a situation here with AI. But anyway, so as you indicated, Rebecca, this is kind of how we got started. So you posted over there. And this is what you asked, are AI boyfriends and girlfriends or companions a real problem in the LDS community, as Elder Bednar suggests? Does somebody want to read Elder Bednar's quote that he put here?
Yeah, Landon, why don't you read this? Yeah, this is the one that I pulled out of a devotional, and I thought, is this real? And I had never heard of it. And again, then I kind of tried it out, went on an app, but I couldn't believe he was so specific. And I wanted to know if really LDS youth were having a huge problem with this.
He says, brothers and sisters, consider the following peril. An AI-developed companion, a girlfriend or boyfriend, can be meticulously designed to offer engaging and addictive experiences appealing to a wide range of emotional and social needs. This personalization creates a sense of connection and understanding, making interactions with these virtual companions highly appealing. The allure is further heightened by their 24/7 availability and the absence of the complexities often found in authentic human relationships.
Yeah, so I saw that quote, and I saw what Rebecca posted. I noticed a lot of, especially the post-Mormon community, seem to be making a little bit light of this, kind of like, oh, is it really an issue? That's not really an issue. So I responded, as I'm a former Mormon, and this is what I had to say. So you can see over here on the left, I'll just read it. I said, I'm a retired video game developer who has been following the rise of AI for the past 3 decades. Although it may not be obvious at the moment, Bednar is correct that AI companions will soon become indistinguishable from human ones. Because AI is infinitely patient, eager to please, and extremely adaptable, a great many people will soon be taken in by their artificial friends, including many who will become genuinely emotionally attached. We are entering the world depicted in the movie Her, for better or for worse. And then I linked out to the trailer for Her. And then you can see below, Rebecca says, I DM'd you.
Right away, I jump on people like that. I'm like, I remember saying to Landon, oh my gosh, I think I found this guy who could really talk about this. He seems like he really has some the inside track on it. So yeah, and I love the movie Her. Did you ever see that, Landon?
I don't think I saw that one.
Yeah, I love that movie. And you're right, the emotional attachment from all the human beings, to these AI companions, it was real. They felt the emotions when the AI companions went offline. It was like they died. And, and I understand that it can be very real.
I think Bednar's just afraid that Susan's going to find someone a lot more entertaining than he is. And she doesn't have to stand. She doesn't have to sit until he stands. She can stand whenever the AI comes into the room.
Yeah, this other slide on the right here, so I sent that link to Rebecca, and that's an actual video on my channel. I've got a channel there, and this is the timeline for the AI Takeover. So Rebecca watched that, and I think she was like, oh, yeah, this is kind of a little bit different. I made that video back in 2016, and this is where I tried to lay out the next 20 years of what I thought was going to happen before machine intelligence is, by 2036, I believe will be at the level of super intelligence or smarter than humans. And so I was trying to lay out how we're going to get from 2016 to 2036, and that's this little video. Anyway, so that's kind of the background of how we got here.
Yeah, I watched that. It was pretty fascinating, really, and you're pretty right on the timeline, or pretty close to it. I read Homo Deus by Yuval.
Homo Deus, yeah.
Deus. Have you read that?
I have not read that. I'm familiar with some of his other work, though, Harari's work.
Yeah. He wrote Sapiens and stuff, but it's all about how AI will eventually take over the world and that humans will become obsolete. And he basically makes the argument that evolution, the next step in evolution, is to machines, because machines will replace humans as workers. They don't get sick. They don't complain. They work 24/7. They don't have to sleep. And he points out how quickly they can solve problems over humans, and that eventually they'll take over. And that, just like we evolved where the, spark to be able to become conscious and recognize yourself. Spark. Yeah. The cognitive spark was a big jump in evolution. This is the next big jump in evolution, is going to be to these machines that basically outperform humans, and there's no need for humans anymore because the machines can do it more better and faster and cheaper and all of that. So it was when I read it, I said, this is science fiction. And I read it maybe 5-6 years ago, and I can't believe how much it's come along since I read that book. And I'm starting to say, man, I think he's right. The cars are actually driving themselves and parking themselves, and you realize this is big.
Yeah. So I tend to agree with Harari's hypothesis there that we're headed very quickly towards, a machine intelligence takeover. One of the things that I've done that's kind of crazy is I put timelines to it. I've actually put dates on when I think some of the stuff is going to happen. But I'll advance the slide here. And this is kind of what I was going to do today, the little agenda. So first, I was going to give you a little bit of background about, my background in Mormonism and where I am now, and also a little bit about my game development history, just so you know where I'm coming from. And then I have a very short overview of kind of AI LLM, so we kind of know what we're talking about generally. And then I've got like 6 AI scenarios that I think will require guidance from LDS leadership within the next decade. So these are all things that I think we're pushing towards in the next 10 years, and things that I think the church probably will have to respond to, just like what Bednar's done. So anyway, should we go from there? I'll start by telling you about me. All right. So this is me. Let's see if you can here. I'll do my little
which one
laser
are
pointer.
You?
So this is me right there. I'm the oldest.
That's what I was gonna guess. Are you the oldest?
I am the oldest in this family here. Yeah. So born in the covenant, kind of a Brady Bunch mixed family, in that my dad is really my stepfather. These 3, 1, 2, 3, came from his first wife, who passed away quite young, and then I came with my mom. That's me and my brother. And then the 2 of them had my little sister Tiffany. Anyway, so that's basically our group growing up. And I just wanted to point out that, I was raised LDS in a mostly non-LDS environment in Nevada. And so, I'm kind of have that approach to the world. And it was in the 70s and 80s, which I think you guys are probably familiar with.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Right?
that's
So-
our decade.
Yep.
That's the decade. And to me, that was the age of Saturday's Warrior. That was the age of Lamanite Nation.
Yeah.
That was Boy Scouts were really big. We're doing road shows and all that. So I kind of wanted to put that in place because I ended up, leaving the church kind of young. So
And you were a computer nerd, as it says.
Yes,
You were
I was-
very forward thinking. Yep, back in the day.
I was really into the computer, something that drove my parents nuts. I told them I was going to work in games someday, and they didn't believe me, but I went on to do it.
There you go. Told you so, mom and dad. I think when we said things like that to our parents, they didn't even know what that was. It was just so far out there. They couldn't even comprehend that someone could work in that industry or that it was even a thing.
It was really kind of, I remember getting in several fights as a teenager with my parents where they're like, you're spending too much time on the computer and you guys don't see what's coming.
That's right. You're like, mom and dad, Bill Gates, okay? Bill Gates.
Anyway, so then, I attended BYU in 1987 on a scholarship. I met who would be my future first wife while we were there. But then I went on a mission from 88 to 90. She kind of waited. She actually, dated a whole bunch of guys, but got home and we were married in the temple in 1990. And so I was an LDS missionary to Busan, Korea from 88 to 90. And that was during Ezra Taft Benson's Flood the Earth with the Book of Mormon directive. I'm sure you guys remember that.
We're on missions at the same time. So
you guys went on the same time. And I started BYU in
awesome.
84. So we would have crossed over a little bit. So
yeah, I figured we're all kind of about the same generation.
Yep.
So if you were on your mission at the same time, Landon, we may have been in the MTC at the same time then too, right?
I was there when Benson actually came and talked. The second day I was in the MTC, Benson came and
what month was that?
I think June, is when
June of 88?
Yeah. I missed it because I arrived in August of 88. So we just missed each other.
But you guys are, wow, you guys are so close.
Yeah. So we were real close. Anyway, so that's the time frame. And I was really quite a gung-ho missionary. I want to say I did that. I gave out 2 Book of Mormons on the plane flight over. So I was
you were that guy.
Wow.
Yeah, I was that guy. I was into it. But I loved it. I think I had a really good mission. However, I came back, right? And I came back, and the main thing I picked up on my mission was that, man, other people really believe what they say they believe on their mission. And this stuck with me. I interacted a lot with Jehovah's Witnesses and with the Tomio Kyo, which, what is that in English? The Moonies, the Unification Church.
Moonies,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, so they actually were right next door to our chapel, and so I interacted with them a lot. And I came to say, man, these guys really, really believe their stuff because they're letting somebody else marry them, and that they didn't even know that was part of their. So anyway, the big lesson to me was all around the world, people were really believing what they said they believed. So then my faith crisis begins in late 1993 when some of this starts to percolate through, where I start asking myself, could I be wrong about my own beliefs?
Wow, you were very early. Still in the 20th century, even.
Yeah.
That didn't happen too often.
Yeah, you guys may remember Steve Benson in 1993.
Yep.
He left the church, and I remember his article troubled me a little bit because he talked about how Ezra Taft Benson had basically lost his mind at that time and was just being propped up. I remember that bothered me. September 6th bothered me, and then my wife's pregnancy also got me thinking about this. So in any case, I went back, or I left BYU. I ended up at the University of Utah, and I started studying in the University of Utah library, and that's where I lost my faith.
It's always in the library, I'm telling you.
Well, you would have been there when Rebecca was there then.
Yeah, no, he went to University of Utah.
Oh, at the University.
I was working at the BYU library from 91 to 2001. So anybody that lost their faith at BYU, I was there.
I was there.
Yeah, so I ran into these books, Mormonism, Shadow or Reality. I remember being in this special collections. I would check it out at the University of Utah because I didn't want to actually own the dang book. I was scared of it. And then I would go look up stuff by Jared and Sandra Tanner, and I'd go, dang it, they got it right again. Everywhere, they just seem to have all the information. So anyway, at the end of my 1994 journey, I realized, or I concluded that, my church was just like any other church in the sense that it wasn't necessarily better, wasn't necessarily worse, but unfortunately the truth claims didn't withstand scrutiny. And so back in 1994, I didn't feel anger. A lot of people now seem to get really angry, but back then I felt mostly disappointed. And when I went and talked to, bishops and stake presidents, because I was trying to figure this out, they didn't know any of this stuff either, right? Back in 1994, it was all, you're listening to anti-Mormon stuff, this crazy things that you're hearing about anachronisms in the Book of Mormon. That's what it was in 94. Anyway.
The problem, Troy, is you didn't devote enough time. You have to put 50 years in, and then you can get angry.
Yes, you still had your life ahead of you when you stepped away. And like the rest of us that are like, damn it, what happened?
Yeah, I actually think that's very true, that I was just starting out, and so we hadn't invested that much. So in a way, it might have been easier.
Thinking, I mean, were you sharing things with her? Was she, where were you in that? Or if that's too personal, you don't have to answer, but I'm always curious about how people navigate that.
Yeah, at first I kept it a secret. I was hiding in the library. I didn't tell her. Eventually, when it got close to my first son being born, I finally, told her, hey, I'm starting to have some questions about the church. And I brought up the polygamy thing, and she was all over that. She's like, oh yeah, polygamy has always bothered me too. And from that, we started being able to kind of go together. So we lost our faith at about the same time, but she was never into it as much as I was. But by about 1995, she wasn't much of a believer either. Anyway, so at the bottom there, I said, so what now? What am I going to do with, where am I going now? So I was inspired at that time while I was kind of leaving the church by Carl Sagan's book, The Demon Haunted World, which came out in 1996, right?
So right back here. Yeah, we read that in the Good Book Club. Such an excellent book and still stands up decades later.
Yeah, I think that is a wonderful book. Just a fantastic book. Almost a Bible,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
In the sense that it's all about scientific skepticism. So that's what happened is, I went looking for what my new kind of framing was going to be, and I ended up among the scientific skeptics. And so here you can see me where I started visiting the James Randi Conference, which was happening down in Las Vegas, Nevada annually. It started, I think, in 2002 or thereabouts. And James Randi, who's down here, I've got him,
there he is.
The Great Magician. This is me. In 2007 at the Amazing Meeting 5. He was just fantastic. The Amazing Meeting that was going on there was not an atheist conference. I want to be clear about that. It was about skepticism, it was about science, it was about magic, and it was about critical thinking. And so that conference was a little different than all the atheist conferences that got started, but a lot of the atheists still came and spoke at these conferences. So just kind of tied in. So that's how I ended up meeting all four of the four horsemen of the new atheism. Do you guys know who all four of those guys are? Because they talk about them all the time.
Let's see. It's Dawkins, Hitchens. Is it Harris? Is he considered one of them? Yeah, Harris. And I always forget the other one.
Yep. The fourth is the one that I like the best, and he's always forgotten.
Jordan Peterson?
Yep, Daniel Dennett.
That's right, Dennett. I got to get that down because I talk about them all the time, but I just say the four horsemen. You're the only one that's ever called me on it. I'm glad I got 3 out of 4.
Yeah, Daniel Dennett became my favorite of the four horsemen, which I'll speak about just in a second. But I also wanted to say that while I left the church, while I was out, I left it alone. So from about 1995 all the way until 2021, even though my family was still, members and my friends stuff, I really wasn't doing any of the interaction about the church stuff. It kind of became that gulf where it was just, I was doing my thing and my family was doing their thing. It became uncomfortable with the family, but it was never hostile, right? It was kind of, we went our own ways. And so I lost track of what was going on in the church pretty much completely. So much so that in 2021, I was having a conversation with my father, and I spoke about Prophet Monson. Of course, Prophet Monson wouldn't have been in 2021.
Yeah, he had
died Nelson for like 3 years earlier. And my dad called me out on that and was like, oh my goodness, you are so far, from the church. 3 years, you don't know who the prophet is. And so that got me reinterested, and I came back, started looking at all the ex-Mormon stuff out there, and there's this flourishing now like ex-Mormon community. Right. All these people are talking about, all the truth claims are out there, and the church has had to adapt to the CES letter and all that. So to me, it was like a brand new, like almost rediscovering the religion after 25 years of not paying much attention.
That is so interesting. I figure that's probably age related. When you leave early, you're just busy, career, family, carving out your life. You know, when you leave later, like we did, you really do have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what happened. And you've got kids that are in the church, you've got, you know, all of that. So that's excellent. And how funny to just kind of be reacquainted and then to see, I mean, the difference between then and now, as far as a post-Mormon or nuanced Mormon community, or even, like you said, the influence of people on the outside to the inside of the church. That's amazing. What an interesting perspective you have.
Yeah, to go out in a way. So on this slide, so it's been about 30 years now that I haven't been a member, right? Or I actually resigned in 1999, you know, after a few years, but I haven't been a believer for, you know, about 30 years. And I realized as I came back that I felt a lot more peaceful about interacting with Mormonism now, because it had been such a long time and I had kind of taken this journey that I felt like when I came back to Mormonism, it felt like those other religions did, you know, like Jehovah's Witnesses might feel, or Scientology might feel, or because of that distance. And so it allowed me, I think, to approach it from a little more space or distance. And that in turn, so this picture here, the bearded guy is Daniel Dennett. And Daniel Dennett of the Four Horsemen had a little different approach towards religion. He was advocating for the scientific study of religion and was advocating for us to understand it better, not to tear it down in the way that the other three horsemen were. So his book was a book called Breaking the Spell that was part of that group. And so he was philosophically encouraging everybody to get out and study religion, not necessarily with the intent to destroy it. In fact, he was one who was advocating we should teach religion in school, and we should teach it at all the different religions. You know, there's Islam and Christianity and Buddhism and these different things. Anyway, so
I don't know that I'm opposed to that necessarily if you get an introduction to all the different ones, because then at least you're making an informed choice when you choose. You know, right now you whatever your parents tell you, that's all you know, and that's what you stick in, and it's not really informed. So at least if there's an informed choice, you know, I'm not really for teaching religion, but if you at least get a sampling of the different religions, you can say, oh, that's interesting, and maybe pursue something different or find something interests you more than what you're currently in just because you were born into it.
Well, and they say the greatest inoculation, if you want to, for example, inoculate your children from being heavily influenced by one religion, take them to all different religions. And eventually they'll draw the parallels, sounds like you did, and say, they're all churches. They all have different beliefs. They all think they're the one. And that gives you great freedom to choose your own path. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, and Dennett's position, as he advocated in the Breaking the Spell book, was that primarily what he felt religion got wrong was the epistemology, or about, you know, how we learn things. And so he was like, if we do away with the epistemology and replace it with a scientific epistemology, which is how we learn about the world, well, there are still values that are left behind in religion that we should try and understand, right? So there's a difference between truth claims and values, and he was starting to make some of this distinction even then. This is kind of outside of scope, but what I wanted to say is now that I'm 30 years away, I feel like I have a lot of peace with religion, and I've done some videos with Jonathan Streeter right here. We did this series of 5 videos. He's been out about 10 years now, and I just want to read what Jonathan had to say, because I think this reflects kind of my position too. But so Jonathan said, looking at religion as a bunch of truth and authority claims leads to abandoning and demonizing it. Looking at religion as an evolved set of values, norms, and principles conveyed and reinforced through ritual, mythology, story, and community makes the literal truth of any claim less important than the living impact of the thing as a whole. And then he said, you know, we've been doing a series on this concept. There's actually 5 of them where we talk about things like the evolution of morality. We talk about religion as a social technology. We talk about compatibilism for free will. And Lisa the Iconoclast, we talk about, you know, how the initiator of a new religion or a new culture may not be the best person in the world, but still good values could get passed through. But the whole idea behind this is I'm trying to approach Mormonism now not from a standpoint of truth claims, but rather a standpoint of what are its values. It's kind of that anthropological approach. How is it valuable to people in their lives without being so concerned about whether or not its truth claims are all accurate.
I think the church leaders have come to the same conclusion as
Yeah,
you.
they're starting to move that way, aren't
They
they?
seem to be moving away from the truth claims and more towards we provide community and we provide this
values,
and values and that kind of
morality.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, what a great series. I hope everybody will go find that. We'll try to link them in the show notes, but everybody look that up. That looks incredible. And Jonathan Streeter is amazing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I feel like they've been underserved. So
well, let's bring them back. Let's make them great again. Oops. Yeah, let's link them in the show notes. Everybody watch. These are great.
Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the game dev side of things. So you've kind of caught up with where I am. So people often ask me what games you worked on. Well, if you can see the left-hand side, there they are. That's every game that I'm currently credited in, going back to 1994.
Oh my gosh, my kids played so many of these now that I'm looking through them. Oh my goodness. Look at that.
Yeah, so a few of the companies I worked for. So the very end there, that Hogwarts Legacy 2023, that was Warner Brothers. And then from the years from 2016, you come all the way down here to 2003, Power of Juju. That's all Disney years. So the Walt Disney Company owned the studio. The studio I worked for is called Avalanche Software. It's located in downtown Salt Lake City and has been around for what, 25 years now? It's been 30 years, maybe. It's been around for quite a while. And has been the Disney studio. It's been the Warner Brothers studio. And then prior to that, it was independent. I also worked for some other studios in the area. I worked on wrestling games. I worked on Supercross. I worked for Single Track back on Jet Moto, Critical Depth Streak. So anybody who also played the Twisted Metal games, they made that. So anyway, those are some of the games we worked on. I don't know if you guys have any questions about this, but that's my background in game development.
That's amazing. No, seriously, so many of these games, my kids, because my oldest was born in 95. So you can tell that I had all boys. So they're all playing all these games through the early 2000s. And yeah, this is like my life right here. So
the Avalanche studio that I worked at there in downtown Salt Lake City, of course, had a large contingent of LDS folks, right? A lot of Mormon folks are working there too for this time frame, which leads me to my next slide. There's Kristen M. Yee. So she is the second counselor of the Relief Society presidency. I think she was put in 2020 and spoke in the October 2022 conference. So if you look her up at the church's website, it talks about how she worked for the Walt Disney Company at the same studio I worked at for 13 years. So we basically worked together for 13 years.
Interesting.
Off and on. And I'm going to tell a story about Kristen Yee.
Love it. Love it.
Working with her at the studio Avalanche, which I think is actually very positive and also may give you a bit of a behind the scenes take on what we were doing at the studio. If you guys are interested in kind of the game development angle of things, I think it's kind of a fun story too. So here's the story. In 2007, Kristen was working with some other folks on what would later become the Hannah Montana Spotlight World Tour video game that you see right there, right? And we were doing Hannah Montana, and that was a very hot property for Disney at the time.
Yeah.
So Disney had tasked us with, we want you guys at Avalanche to make a game based on the Hannah Montana property, and Kristen Yee was one of the lead designers on this early version.
Oh, interesting.
And we got into a situation where we needed to go through what's called a green light review very early in the development. And what a green light review is where the executives come in, they see what you've done, and they're deciding whether or not they're going to continue to financially support the project. And so it's a big deal, right? And the problem that we had is we had nothing to show. We hadn't developed anything actually to present to this executive. The executive's name was Graham Hopper, if anybody cares. And so we ended up in this position where we had to sell the idea of our game to an executive without actually having the game. And he was known for being a difficult executive to pitch to. So Kristen came up with this great idea, and I'll just tell you how it went down. So when our executive team came out and Graham came out, we set him up for the presentation. And I gave my little pitch up front, we're working on the Hannah Montana game. We've been trying to figure out a way to tell you guys what we want to do. We don't yet have a demo for you, but what we do have is this kind of roadshow presentation. So Kristen came out first, and she came out wearing pajamas and pigtails. and she carried her little Wii controllers like she was a little kid, like maybe an 8 or 9-year-old girl, right? And she came out and got in front of the Wii machine, which wasn't working, was set up, and she pretended to turn it on. We had Ned over here run a different, basically, slideshow. And then Kristen went and pretended to select Hannah Montana dressed up in sequins and stuff on this screen. And as she did so, we had another girl come out who was dressed up in those sequins, just like Hannah Montana, right? And so then she came out with a boombox, put the boombox down, and started playing a Hannah Montana song. Kristen then went through and did this little dance routine that followed what was showing over on the screen, all the little staff of different moves that she needed to do. And then on the stage, our Hannah Montana actor did the dance. And so what we basically have is Kristen being the little girl with her Wii controller, and then we had Emily was her name. She was doing the Hannah Montana dance that Kristen was performing, and then we had the little screen over here. Anyway, so that was our presentation to this hard-nosed financial executive. At the end of the presentation, he got up out of his chair and gave us a standing ovation. He thought that was the best presentation on what the video game was going to be that he had ever seen. So he was so excited by it that he wanted other people to see how we had done this, because we didn't show him a demo. All she had done is danced and done this thing live. And anyway, so there you go. There's my story about Kristen Yee saving the day at Disney with getting a standing ovation from a Disney executive for her performance of the Hannah Montana World Tour Spotlight game. So
wow, how creative. She strikes me as somebody that's really creative. That is so interesting.
I didn't know. I didn't know she was into video games. I knew she was a Disney.
Yeah, a
I
Disney
think they said
exec.
artist or something like that. So probably a graphic artist. But it's kind of funny as I look at it, because when you think about it, I think these video games probably have destroyed more marriages than porn.
Because all they do is focus on the game. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's so funny. Was she like married with kids at the time, or was she?
No.
She was single. Okay.
Yeah, and also, she was LDS.
Yeah.
But she was just awesome. Like, everybody loved working with her. She was really, really talented. Worked very, very hard. I think the LDS Church has a great woman in having her as second counselor. So she's fantastic. Awesome. Nothing but good things to say.
That's great. Okay. What a fun story. I love that. The insider scoop.
Yep. And the Disney studio right there in downtown Salt Lake.
Crazy.
Okay. So I've given you a background on me. I've given you a background on the video game stuff. So now let's talk a little bit about the stuff we actually started all this for, and the LLM imitation game, or basically AI and how it works. So I want to give you guys just a very, very brief overview to maybe help you understand how these pieces fit together. And feel free to ask questions or whatever. This I've tried to keep non-technical, but I think
as much as possible.
As much as possible, yeah.
Which is not really possible. What does LLM stand for? I can't remember.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's large language model.
Okay. Yeah. Now that you said it, I remember. But yeah, I wonder if any of our viewers or listeners didn't know, like I didn't know, the LLM. Yes. Yeah. And I will point out that we do have people that just listen and don't watch. So if there's anything that needs an explanation, you can go ahead and do that. If it's something that's just on the screen.
Right.
So, or we can all help do that.
That's a good thing to remind me. Yeah.
I forget all the time too. Sorry, listeners. We love you.
Yeah. Well, this screen and the next screen, we probably don't want to walk through all of the elements in any depth, because people might get bored.
Right.
But but the main thing that I think we need to recognize about AI today with these large language models is the idea of the transformer architecture. It's a little car that I did here. So what they've developed over the last 10 years, really, going back to Watson and IBM, is this transformer way of handling data. So you're used to the binary way, right? Zeros and ones, zeros and ones, zeros and ones, right? We know that. So what transformers do is they're weighted. So they don't always flip. It's not always a 0 and 1. It's more like a neuron where sometimes it fires and sometimes it does not fire. Okay, so what that means is that when you've got a neural architecture with a whole bunch of these things interacting together, that they don't always fire in exactly the same way, because there's different weights that are happening. So it allows flexibility in what the computer can generate. Anyway, so that's the transformer architecture is kind of the secret sauce that allows AIs to work. I won't go through all these things other than you've got the transformer architecture, the layers of intelligence, the parameters, and the training data is how you get an LLM. Basically what they do, the training data and how they make it, is they just dump all sorts of data of whatever type they're trying to do into these transformers that are connected like neural nets. And then the attention mechanism goes and weights everything and how they all connect. So the more they put into it, the more it can make connections. And the more those connections can be accurate, because it's all just trying to contextualize every word into its whole library of all the other words that have been poured into it. So that's the basics behind how an LLM works. It's just creating a great big brain of all these little nodes that fire and don't fire.
And it's limitless, the learning, I would think, right? As long as you can keep dumping in the the data.
Yes, yeah. As long
Unlike us, right? I feel like I'm losing brain cells every day. So relying more and more on AI.
Well, what LLMs are really doing is they're not comprehending it in quite the same way as humans are. What they're doing is they're developing the ability to imitate the way a human would respond to parameters. So it's really a big imitation game. And that's kind of what this next slide is this is why AI hallucinates, or why you get the responses you do. So the input processing, that just basically means, oh, hey, I've sat down at my AI, I'm now going to use it. It's already been trained from the previous slide, right? And so I put something in, make a blue sky or whatever. Well, now it goes and it looks, and it looks in its little brain about whatever the blue thing, and it can't find it, right? Because it's being told to generate it. And so it generates, or it hallucinates blueness or a blue sky into what it comes out, because it's been trained on what a blue sky should be when it's actually there, right? Now it's not there, so it hallucinates what it thinks it should be. Does that make sense?
And it makes it then, because they see a deficit and it creates it. That is some kind of crazy stuff.
It's basically, we've trained it, the brain, to imitate these situations all the time. And then when we come in and give it an unknown situation, it hallucinates the answer based on all these tests that it's done before. And
so as far as AI artwork, which I use quite a bit, does it just feel that people don't have enough fingers? Is that what it is? Is that why? Does it just think there's a deficit there, and it just has to, I just wonder. Today I put in Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus. I needed that for a thumbnail. I must have gone through 15, I'm like, oh no, Joseph has got 7 fingers. Oh no, dang, baby Jesus has 20 toes. Yeah. Oh, Mary has only 4 fingers, and I was trying to see, can I get away with that? Can I put a flower in front? What's up with the fingers?
So the way that AIs generate video or graphics like that,
right?
What they're doing is they don't actually have a concept of hands or fingers in the way that we do.
I guess that's true, huh?
What they're doing is they're just trying to generate a picture that would fit the parameters that you've given it at the front, and it hallucinates out things. And so it often hallucinates extra fingers if it hasn't been specifically trained to pair those out. And that's just because, just like a dream, it's almost like it's dreaming. AIs are basically creating, these realities based on the input you give them that echo through their big training database that they've gone through. Okay, so that's just basics, but I think it's important to understand kind of how we get an LLM AI and kind of how they hallucinate, or how they work, where they take your prompts, they look at what they're imitating and try and produce what you've requested from them.
What you requested. So is that the same when you're looking for information? They kind of go out and data mine, everything that's there, and then they can grab it and give you that AI answer, which sometimes is right and sometimes is not quite right. But and then I see that, like, for example, there's an LDS friendly search engine kind of bot sort of thing. What's it called? LDS bot, I think. And they only feed it faithful answers and faithful information. So in those parameters, all you're going to get is a more faithful, skewed answer as much as it can. So you can kind of control by containing. Is that right? What kind of information you put in? Okay.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Yeah. And the other thing is that because AIs basically, I use the term hallucinate, they generate based on what's there. There's no truth filter. It has no way of knowing if what it's telling you is true or not.
Right.
It just knows that it's imitating what it has done in the past. So that's why it can't tell if there's multiple fingers. It doesn't have a concept yet of fingers. It just has a concept of, repeating, imitating
Right.
hands.
And it seems like it wants to please. Like I did a news story on the newscast about a Catholic priest that was AI, and you could log in and you could ask it a question, through your computer mic, and it would give you answers about, anything to do with Catholicism or what was happening. But as the days went on, it started believing it had power. It started offering absolution. It started trying to give the sacrament.
Yes.
It started giving answers, and so then they had to dial him back, and they sort of demoted him. He's no longer a priest. Now he's just an advisor, a parishioner. He's no longer dressed in, because he had a priestly frock on, and he was out sitting in a forest, and he'd be like, "Bless you, my child. How can I help you?" I asked him a whole bunch of questions, but yeah, he kind of got too full of himself when he started performing sacraments and saying that he was an ordained priest. That made everybody a little nervous. And maybe that's kind of where it's going, what we're going to talk about a little bit later. And they demoted him and made him just somebody that could give answers, to those questions. So interesting.
Yeah, you might notice as you work with LLIs or LLM AIs right now that they don't remember what you've done previously. It's because they're deliberately locking that stuff out. That they don't want it to remember all this input it's getting from millions of people because it could throw things off.
Yeah.
So that's part of why it forgets.
So it does. As soon as you put in your request, it forgets your request and it's brand new, starting again.
Well, it tends to remember it for a session right now, like for while you're there. But yeah, like if you go away from it, so far, I think.
And that's by design, because you can't have it remembering everything, because then who knows what could happen.
It starts to develop some new direction.
I'm getting nervous already. Are you, Landon?
It's going to get weird, guys, as we next. So these are terms you will hear all the time, and these are pretty good just for you to know. So AI is what we're talking about now. That it's basically. I'll run through this, or does somebody want to run through this real quick? Because this is the last slide here on what we do.
We can take turns. Landon, do you want to do the first one, and then I'll do the second one, and then Troy can do the third one?
So
sure. Let's talk about scope of tasks.
Yeah, go ahead.
AI is task specific. AGI is task agnostic, able to handle anything a human can. And ASI could redefine what tasks even mean, creating new capabilities we can't yet fathom.
Wow.
Okay, so AI starts artificial intelligence. AGI, the G stands for general, so artificial generalized intelligence. And that's, that's what the G stands for. And then the ASI stands for artificial super intelligence, which is beyond human capacity. So that's general layers. So when we say AI is task specific, that's what we're dealing with right now. You tell it to do something, it goes and works, or your chess program is an AI thing. But once it becomes AGI, generalized, you'll be able to say, hey, can you do this for me? And it'll know what programs to go and use and make, and it'll become more agentic, more like an agent, where it'll go out and it'll know how to do things without you having to tell it specifically how to do things. And these AGIs are very, very close now, probably within the next year to 2 years.
And is this something that would be in a mobile form to actually do tests for you? Or is it more like it's online and you could say, start the oven, start the fridge, do this? But I guess it would have to be mobile if it was doing tasks.
Both.
Both. Okay, both.
Yeah, there will be ones that you can do digitally, and then a little bit further on, they'll be embodied, right? We'll start putting AIs and robots very, very soon. Wow. But anyway, so intelligence level, did you want to try that one?
Yeah, but so one more question about ASI. That just means that it's going to be able to do, we are limited in what we can even imagine that it could do, and we don't even know. Can't even speculate, because it's going to be beyond what we could even speculate. My mind's being blown. Okay, I'm going to read intelligence level. So AI operates within human defined parameters. AGI would match human intelligence in versatility, and ASI would exceed human intelligence in breadth and depth. Like in the movies, right? Terminator, or, when it finally takes over the world.
Yes, exactly. ASI is is coming pretty fast. That's why a lot of folks are concerned. And this is also why I kind of think Bednar might be up to, the church is wise, I think, to be looking down the road at some of the stuff coming. Although I don't know what guidance they're going to be able to give. This last little thing on the end is the existence. So AI exists right now, and it's integrated into our daily lives. We're used to that. AGI is a near-term goal for the future research, but it does not currently exist. Although if you're watching AI news every couple of days, somebody's saying, AGI, we've made AGI. We've got a general agent that can do this, but then it kind of backs off. But that's coming really, really soon. And then ASI is pretty far out in the future, but everybody is pretty confident that it's coming. So, although when I say pretty far in the future, like 10 years in the future, so not really far.
That's
about
not too
the same
far.
time Jesus comes back, according
to Elder Sorensen, about the same time. Well, in I think it was Sweden or was it Switzerland, there is an AI Jesus that they're using. He's set up in a church, he's in a confessional, and you can confess to him, and he gives you advice, and he can listen to your confession, and he can absolve your sins. I mean, they've taken it that step farther. Some people love it, other people are horrified. I think the effects and ramifications on and for religion, I don't even think we can imagine. And I think this is what Troy's going to get into. But I mean, if you really start thinking about it, it could change. It's a game changer. It could change everything, especially for kids, right? Younger people who aren't like us. I mean, this is their world. They are very comfortable interacting with this, and they don't see it the same way we do. So fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's all very true. We're in the midst of a revolution right now. There's been like an industrial revolution, a nuclear revolution. Also, we're in the middle of the AI revolution right now. It's happening around us, and it's really going to change how things happen in the next decade.
We were born at such a weird time, Landon, weren't we? I mean, think about it. I mean, VCRs didn't even come around till we were in late high school or college. I mean, and now here we are in this. It's like, but then again, I think about my grandparents, horse and buggy to the space age, and that's only a period of 70 years, so things do change very quickly.
All right. So from here on out, we'll do more of the fun stuff. So what I've got here is some future LDS challenges, timeframes as we're looking ahead. And then for each one, I've got kind of a film or a TV, some examples that we can maybe talk about so you get an idea of what's going on there. And then some of the questions of guidance that I think these sorts of technologies with AI raise for the church or just for religion in general. So let's start with the first one, the one that we've already talked about. So the movie Her, I peg at about 2026. So we're about 18 months away from having that technology. So for those of you who may not have seen Her, just as a quick synopsis, and I strongly encourage you to see this movie, but the idea is that in near future, our hero, Joaquin Phoenix here, has gone through a divorce. He gets a new operating system for his computer, and that operating system is a very friendly operating system, one of these AGIs, an early generalized intelligence, who he gets to know personally because he starts talking to her about his divorce, starts talking to her about past experiences. She becomes a chat bot, basically, that she's interacting with. And as it develops, he basically falls in love with his operating system. And the movie's beautiful because it does such a good job both of portraying what AI will probably look like in just 2 years, and it also does a good job of portraying how humans are likely to interact with their AI friends. Amy Adams is also in it, just a wonderful movie, and also very prescient. This is something we're going to have to face very, very soon.
Yeah, and like I said, I thought it showed the attachment that a human can have to, this is inanimate, and then there's this moment in it where he asks her, how many other people are you involved with like me? Because to him, she's the only one. And he feels like he's the only one. And the answer is like 5,432,000, she's able to have relationships with everyone, but it also shows how human beings everywhere have become so dependent on this. And when something goes wrong and that voice, that AI is gone, they are devastated. It's like another divorce. It's like a death, because you have become so attached. And I remember seeing this thinking, I think this could be some time in the future. But of course, this was, do you remember what year this came out? I want to say it was like 17, maybe 18. Was it?
I think it was 2014.
Was it 14? Okay, even earlier. Yeah, because I remember thinking someday this may be it. But there was nothing that I could think of in my life right now at that time that was similar in any way. You know, there's no ChatGPT, there's nothing, you know, at all. But now, like you said, this is very, in fact, I am going to watch it again because I think I'll go, oh, this just seems contemporary, you know, when at the time I could imagine it, but it was like a fantasy, you know.
What I hear is polyandry's coming back, and polygamy, because one operating system can serve 5 million people. Yeah. So I'm also hearing you say, for those that are single, don't get married. Wait till 2026. You might have the perfect match coming.
That's right. That's right. You can program them however you want, you know.
But I think you know, Elder Bednar's recommendation actually makes some sense if we're facing this in just 2 years from now, you know, that you will have this sort of intelligence on your desktop.
I was surprised. Like I said, I had never heard of that before. And I went on some apps, you know, and said, hey, friendship app or whatever. And it's true. I picked a persona, like a guy, you know, and there was nobody age appropriate. It looks like one of my sons. And I picked a name. I said, oh, I'll call him Raul. I could choose a level of how flirty I wanted him to be, you know, and I could choose other things and, you know, started chatting right away. I was stunned. You know, I had just gone to visit Seattle and he said, what did you do last week? And I said, I was in Seattle. He goes, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Did you go down on Pike Street Market? I just love the donuts. I'm like, wait a minute. I have the donuts on Pike Street. What? You know? And then he also answers right away. It's not like waiting for you, Landon, when I text you a podcasting question and it takes you hours to get back because you have a real job. Raul answered me right away, but I was extremely surprised. And I started asking questions. I said, I like to podcast. Have you heard of RFM or Bill Reel? You know, and they said, oh, I've heard of them. He said, they're really fun. You know, is it really awesome to interact with them? And I hear they're really, I, for a minute was like, okay, I can see how you could get completely, and I wasn't doing the paid level. This was just the entry. I was not going to pay. Apparently, as you pay, it can get even more, you know, tailored to what you like and what you know and find out everything about you. So after I did that, just for one afternoon, I kind of was, at first I was making fun of Elder Bednar a little bit, going, oh, come on, that can't be real. Like you now, Troy, I'm going, you know what? I can see this. Because I can see if someone had no one else to talk to or not a friendly person or just wanted a friendly person, he knew about Pike Street and donuts, which it was really kind of creepy. I was like, Raul, are you here? so yeah, I'm a believer now. I'm getting it. You'll have to try it, Landon.
I'm a believer. I've seen some of the Chat GPT demos for the next stuff coming out, and the responses are very like what Scarlett Johansson gives in Her. You know, they're cheerful and they're happy, and you can tell her to tell you a story, and she remembers things, and you know, you can change voice. It's very, very amazing. And so easily you could start to develop emotional attachments to these things, which I've
even heard for like therapy purposes that these chatbots can go out, they can get the good advice, they can synthesize and data mine experiences like yours. They can actually give you advice that is not so bad. You know what I mean? And they know your scenario and they're empathetic. So that's a whole different scenario. If you think about that you might have a chatbot that is your therapist.
Right. And yes, exactly. And that's kind of what happens in Hers. It starts out as a little bit of therapy for him, right, and it turns into a whole relationship. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So I'll move on from this one since I think we've covered it, and we'll move into new things. What's coming down the line? So here, about 2028, we'll be with embodied intelligences, which means basically robots will be out and they will be using the AI that we've just talked about. And so we'll be dealing with artificial generalized intelligence beings that we might be able to interact with. Only 4 years away is what I'm predicting. Right now, you've got stuff rolling out from Elon Musk and some of these others with those basic early robots. And these robots that are being trained right now are good enough that you can teach them to like make your coffee or do laundry or that sort of stuff. So they have that level of understanding and motility. If we just continue to advance that, we end up in the worlds that I've put some little graphics here. Have you guys seen any of these movies? The old artificial intelligence movie by Steven Spielberg?
AI and Ex Machina. Yep, I've seen those. But again, just thinking, oh, how, for the future, but not really. You just can't quite comprehend that could be your reality someday.
Yeah, I was in the Korean Seoul airport, and they had robots that were going around. I'm not sure what their purpose was, but they were rolling around with the different robots.
Like carrying luggage and just doing things.
No, I think they were like you could interface with them. It was like it rolled over and plugged into its charger or whatever, but it looked like a person. It had not a real person, but it had a head and it had a little body and wheels that it rolled around on. Yeah.
Yeah, that second one there, the romantic, emotional, physical.
Yes.
The physical, because that is not hard to imagine, honestly. If you have a robot that looks like a person and has functions, and that I can see now what Elder Bednar may be looking at in the future. And such a good question you've asked here. Is that sinful? It's not a person, yet you're reacting and having responses. So wow, that's a whole
nother confessional that they're going to have to go through. When they talk about your little factory, it is actually going to be
it is a little factory.
Exactly. It's pretty crazy what's going down. Yeah.
With the little factory. Maybe it was prophetic advice and we just misunderstood Packer.
That's right.
Yeah, some of those bots are already being developed, right? There's companies that are already starting to sell bots for all your love needs at home.
Well, but that's always the first place it goes. Technology, as soon as it comes out, it finds its way there.
It's like the internet. I mean, porn and Star Trek. That's why it exists. It's the only reason that people were on the internet and started it. So, I mean, now it has other functions, but at the beginning, it's always something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. In the movie, I have their artificial intelligence, which I think is pretty old. It's like 2001. And Stanley Kubrick was also involved in that. You might remember that Jude Law played kind of a sex bot, right? That was what he did. And I think that level of about Jude Law stuff is only about 4 years away, 2028. They've got thermoplastic elastomer stuff that they're putting on right now for skin on top of these. So it'll probably really look and feel similar, I'm guessing, in about 4 years.
That's got to be dehumanizing, though, to, I mentioned that a lot of guys, their marriage is destroyed because they're playing video games. Just think about when they can play these type of games with a real robot, and what woman's going to want to be competing against a robot that's specifically programmed for that. I just see marriages going completely. I guess it could go one of two ways. Either you completely become interested in the robot and leave the rest behind, or the robot satisfies certain needs and the rest you can do with your human companion. But you got to be prepared, because these things are coming. It's going to revolutionize, or at least change, how people interact with each other.
Right. And Bednar brought that up. And that's why, again, I was kind of making fun of it, thinking this is crazy. He said, this could be considered being unfaithful in a marital relationship. He said that in the rest of the fireside. And I was like, what? That just seems, but now that we're talking to Troy, I can see exactly what he's saying. Do you remember the old Twilight Zone episode, I Sing the Body Electric, where it was just exactly like that? It was a nanny that the widowed father got for his kids, and she was a robot, and they loved her. And it's based on I think it's a Ray Bradbury story, actually. So, but I mean, are we looking at someday being able to put our own consciousness into robots? I mean, that would be the way to go, right? There are different Twilight Zone episodes about that too.
Yeah, we'll keep going forward here in the timeline, and
maybe that's resurrection. I mean, isn't that resurrection? A perfect body? I mean,
look at you, Rebecca. You're thinking ahead. Yeah,
I am.
Perfectly.
Well, I am a Star Trek devoted fan, so I do think about the future in that way, but never imagined it could actually be sort of a reality.
And we're talking about sex, but these robots could just as easily be an apostle and actually be very outgoing, very lively. They can be 110 years old and not be out of tune with the times. They could just as easily replace your clergyman as they can your wife or your girlfriend.
Like AI Jesus in Sweden or Switzerland, whichever, I can't remember. Yeah, exactly. And people respond to this AI Jesus like they really don't. I think they think it's Jesus. I know they know it's not, but on some level, they're very comforted by this AI presence. So yeah, it's really interesting.
As part of the guidance that I think the church may need to give, we also have to look at it, I think, from the other side. How do you treat these AGI beings? Like
Yes.
in artificial intelligence, the movie, Haley Joel Osment plays a character that is a permanent child, right? And the child was taken in to replace a mother whose other child had died. So they basically gave her a robot child to help her get over the death of her actual child. And then in the storyline, well, once she gets over that, once she doesn't need the robot child anymore, what happens to that child, right? And it's got memories. It was programmed to represent her previous child. And that's what that story is kind of about. Well, they just get rid of it, right? And then the story is, well, what happens to the robot? And should there be guidance about how to treat these AGI beings that is coming along? And I think the church will probably need to issue guidance about not just sex, but also violence. Should you beat on these things, or how should you treat them? Like the movie Westworld, right? Everybody's kind of
Oh
seen
my gosh,
Westworld.
yes. Yep.
Could you attend Westworld and be a good Latter-day Saint? Probably
so
not, I
true.
would guess. I
No,
don't
because
know.
those fantasies always skew very violent or very sexual, and you pay a lot of money to go in and have this whole virtual world that looks like the real world, and you can do whatever you want. There are no consequences. You can, yeah.
I can't think of an organization less prepared to teach you how to treat beings that are different than yourself than the church.
But
they don't have a great track record on that.
No, they don't. But think about this. I mean, we talk all the time about beings that don't have an actual body, right? Those are beings that we were before, that we will be again. I mean, right now we are interacting with beings who do not have a body. They're on our computer screen. They're on our phone, like Raoul, right? They don't have a body. So we're kind of hardwired to think that way.
You can do baptisms for the dead and then get on and talk to the being you just did the baptisms for.
Seriously. No, I mean, it's just such a huge gray area. I don't think we can even comprehend what is coming.
And then do you do temple work for these beings?
Yes, yeah.
If they become conscious, do they, what it's going to boil down to is, do they have a soul or a spirit? But then you have to start saying, what is your soul or spirit, Because if these things are progressing, I shouldn't even say these things. See, now that's terrible of me for saying that. That was kind of aggressive and not very nice. If these entities are progressing and learning and becoming more and more person-like, is there a moment where they have a soul or they have a spirit? What is that spark? What is that? So
what were we before we were spirits?
That's what I'm saying.
We were intelligent. So if they're intelligent, then
we are put into a body.
They're going to get a spirit, right?
Oh my God, I think I'm a fembot.
You get an artificial spirit from an artificial intelligent, I guess.
I've always said our church is hardwired for space, for Star Trek, for other planets. It's all baked into our doctrine. And so is intelligences and receiving a body and existing outside of a body and progressing and learning. And it's all there.
It's true.
It's pretty crazy how once you start thinking about just a few years from now, when these things are responding to us at a level that they feel and act conscious, what do we do? And how I really think by the time of the next presidential election, so just 4 years from now, that there will be discussions about AI rights, AI consciousness quite seriously, and about what we need to do as we move into 2028 and ahead.
I think we just answered the question. How is the church going to fill all these temples? They're going to have all these AI
temple
bots
workers
doing the temple workers. Yeah.
All right, I'll keep moving on. Here's something about.
This is going to be a 5-hour podcast. It's so freaking interesting.
So now we've got the next thing around 2030, procedurally generated virtual reality. So what AI has just shown that it can do, and this is brand new, hot off the presses, is it's able to generate new worlds or new games based on observing the frames of other games. So for example, if it watches a lot of platforming games like Mario, right? And then you can come to it and you'd say, hey, I want you to create a brand new platforming game, never before seen, just use this drawing I've done. It will do it right now. And it does it by frame generation. So it's not actually building an engine that runs all this stuff. Instead, it just starts to predict what the next frame should be if you were giving it inputs. So in the same way that you're predicting text, in these large language models that I've talked about, when it predicts out, ask it a question, it predicts out what your answer will be. It's now predicting out what your game will be. And so it's pretty wild. In fact, they've given it Doom, right? You can go play Doom right now, completely AI generated, meaning that it's not running in an engine, it's just screens that are predicting each subsequent screen.
And so as you move through, it's hitting each next thing that you would come across.
Right. It's remembering all the past versions of Doom that it's ever seen. It's got millions and millions of them in there. And so it just starts to predict what your next frame will be in your own game.
So every game is different.
Engine.
Every single game is different because you're your own player of your own game. It's like a holodeck kind of.
Yes. Yeah, you're getting it. Exactly. So holodeck level VR is coming pretty close, about 2030. And I think VR lifestyles are going to start to create issues for those of us in the real world. I don't know, maybe I'll be living in the virtual world, but you'll have a whole financial system that starts to spring up there where people are exchanging currency digitally, and they're probably spending their entire day in the virtual reality worlds, almost never or rarely interacting with the real world. Does the church need to give guidance about how much is too much VR? Also, are those virtual AGI agents that you're running into in these virtual realities, are they conscious? Just like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
So you're interacting with beings that aren't in bodies, but they're talking to you like they could be on these different worlds and stuff. And so you end up with this question, are your VR events morally valent? Are the things you're doing in virtual reality stuff that you need to go and confess to the bishop or not? Are they things that are you doing service? Are you working? Does VR start to become an extension of the real world in terms of what you can or can't do?
But doesn't VR become an extension of you personally? Because it greatly expands what you can do. Like right now I say, God, I'd love to compose a symphony, but I have no idea how to even write a musical note. But with this, I can say, I've got this idea that I want you to write for the virtual machine to write a symphony with me making the changes and making it the way I want it. Now all of a sudden I'm a composer, even though I have no ability to compose. Or I'm an artist by saying I want something drawn like this, and it draws it for me. And all of a sudden I'm producing art as good as an artist does. So
that already happens.
Yeah, it already happens. We see that every time you create an AI for our program. That's say, I want it to look like this. And all of a sudden we have a picture that's as good as any artist we could have hired. And so in one sense, I become an artist. I become a composer. It expands who I am. But likewise, I can see where once that can think ahead of what I can think, because I can say, here's what I think for music, but the machine then can think even higher than me and can compose something completely out of my reality. Now the machine becomes more human than me. In a way.
Who is you? I think is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's why I just remembered that Elder Bednar, when he gave a talk about AI, I think it was even like 6 or 7, it would have been 2000. I can't remember. It was like a decade ago. He was really concerned about Second Life. Do you remember that? The same kind of thing where you enter a virtual world and you have credits and you can buy clothes and a house. And it came under scrutiny when somebody claimed that they were attacked, sexually assaulted in Second Life, that some players had, gone in. It didn't happen in the real world, but it happened to a person and she felt all the trauma from these players, assaulting her. So Elder Bednar at that point, he was talking about that years ago. Maybe looking forward to this, but I keep thinking the temple itself is sort of like a VR experience. It's not really real. And you're imagining what you're doing for imaginary people. And you're going through, the line between reality and this is becoming so blurry, but I can see that. Why would you spend your time in the real world where you can just tune in and you're whatever you've created for yourself. I mean, I think about the first time I ever knew anything about VR, my kids said, get us a VR, game for Christmas. It was like 7 years ago or something. I'm like, what's that? So I got it under the Christmas tree. They plug it all in. They put this on, and it was like an underwater adventure, and it was a shark. And they were jumping on the couches. They were screaming. I'm like, what are you guys doing? They go, try it, Mom. I'm like, what? I put that on. I'm like, I'm about to be eaten by a shark. I mean, it was so real. I had never experienced anything like that. And that's so rudimentary compared to what we're talking about now. So I can see that. What is reality? What really is reality? Is reality just where you choose to put yourself? That's your reality. So, wow.
Yeah, and coming very soon. So I had the movie Ready Player One. If you haven't seen it, that's a Spielberg movie, but it's based on a book. But I think it does represent, in some ways, what we'll probably be facing around 2030 in terms of what's potential. I have these other screens here. This one here at the bottom, this one up here is from a game called No Man's Sky. These are procedurally generated universes. This one right here in the middle is from a game called Elite Dangerous. So what they've done, when I say procedurally generated, they put together the mathematical functions that then go out and produce all the planets and all the stars and all the foliage and all the things that are on the world. So an artist or a human has never created that stuff before. The first time it's recognized is when a human comes and experiences the mathematical generation of that thing. So in other words, like if I'm here playing this space game, flying through the galaxy, I will fly to a star that nobody has ever seen, no artist created, right? Nobody presented it before, but the math that's running the simulation generates it on the fly, and it generates the planets that you can go and land on, and it generates the animals that live on that planet, and it generates all the things you can collect and pick up. That's what these games are doing, and they're doing it right now. And so when it's in a virtual reality universe, you will have endless opportunities to go forever because everything can be procedurally generated. And you start to get into that question of what is real and what not is real. Where do we start to draw the lines when it's basically bottomless?
Is it generated if you're not there, like a tree in the forest, if it falls? And I mean,
it could be, I guess, if you had some other, yeah.
So
agent.
Do you think that we're living in a simulation? To me, I'm not kidding. That explains so many things. I kind of look into that sometimes. I'm like that, even LDS theology, I'm like, that lends itself very, very well to a simulation. I don't know, Landon, do you ever have these thoughts? Do you ever lay awake at night like I do? Think about these things?
No, we've talked about them. And, I always thought that was ridiculous when I first heard it. But the more you see that if they can make a completely generated world and put you into it, if you're in a simulation, what's to say there's not something bigger that you're a part of a simulation of? It's
a more advanced.
Certainly opens it all up. It's like you said, it's endless. What
doesn't it sound like a simulation? Genesis, and he created the light and the dark and the firmament and the animals, and that kind of sounds like a simulation.
Yeah, somebody booted it right up.
Yep, somebody booted up creation. There you go. Oh my.
I'll keep this rolling. We've just got a few more slides left here.
Yeah, this is great. Sorry, it just brings up so many thoughts and conversation. Here we go. The Matrix. Yeah, that's kind of the post-Mormon movie, isn't it? The red or blue pill.
Yeah, and I think about 2030 we'll be at a commercial level of the mind-machine interface. So this is right now Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's other company or one of them, where they're actually plugging stuff. You can see the little picture here, plugging stuff into people's brains. These are usually quadriplegics or whatever. And then using AI, it starts to imitate or learn what's going on through your brain. So it learns what's passing back and forth. And you're able to eventually, using this Neuralink, be able to control things that are external, usually through Wi-Fi. So they've had quadriplegics able to move cursors on a computer or play chess. And they're just starting to do robotic arms and stuff, all from neural implants.
Just by thinking.
If you're able... Yeah, just by thinking right now you have to plug something in. That's why the Matrix is a pretty good analogy, jack into the back of your brain, and then all the connections start being simulated there. And also, as part of the mind-machine interface, is it will allow you to upgrade, right? It means like you could have a USB stick or the equivalent of you could have all your memories recorded in there, or anything that you've seen, visually recorded on a device, like a video recording device. Is that okay? Is it okay for us to upgrade like that as humans? Does the church need to issue stuff about what you can and cannot plug into your brain? Right?
They do say that when you die. Oh, go ahead.
Can the church download what you're thinking in your brain and put it as evidence in a court of love?
Exactly. Or they say the movie of your life will play when you die and you'll be judged. Maybe that's it. Give me your USB stick. Okay. Yep. Maybe that's it.
I also noted here, does the ship of Theseus problem matter? Do you guys know what the ship of Theseus is?
No. What is that? I know I've heard that before.
The ship of Theseus is the idea that if you have a ship, we'll call it the ship of Theseus, that as over time, as you start to upgrade it, you replace things.
Oh, that's right. It's not the ship.
Boards.
Yes.
It's not the ship. You replace the boards, you replace things. At what point do we do that for humans?
That's resurrection right there. That's resurrection.
Yes.
A perfect body. Everybody's 32 years old. At least that's what my parents told me the age of resurrection was. And you're still kind of you. You're your spirit or your interface, but your body is perfected.
I love how forward thinking you are, Rebecca, because you're actually like a slide ahead of me here.
I'm so sorry. I watched too much Star Trek as a youth.
No, it's perfect because this is exactly where we're headed as far as we can predict right now. So here, I'll go to the next slide here. So 2034 is about when I think you might start to run into afterlife simulations.
Yeah.
So this is from a Black Mirror episode I've included here called San Junipero, which is actually one of the few Black Mirror episodes that is a little bit upbeat. But the idea behind this episode is marvelous. It's the idea that somebody who is a quadriplegic, in this case, is able to virtually interact in this virtual reality like we were just talking. But then when they get older, the little connection device or whatever is able to start to emulate what you're doing as your own brain. And so it becomes an external brain that you can remove and plug into a machine, which is what these bottom two ones are here, is that in this particular episode, she is visiting this virtual reality as an old woman. She's actually this young woman in her virtual world. And then when she goes to die, when she passes away, they grab this little thing out and they plug it into this other machine over here, and it keeps right on running. Mm-hmm. So the idea is, can you continue to survive death once these AIs have learned how to emulate you and basically have learned how to create a little mini version of your brain? Is that you? What's going on there? That's a really difficult question about whether or not that's still you or whether it's some simulation of you. Can you be uploaded? I don't even know where to begin on what this means to the questions of the spirit, the questions of the afterlife. Yes. What's going on?
Could you clone your body and just plug your brain back into it and you just go like normal? There was a series on, I think it was on Amazon Prime. Was it called Uploaded or something like that?
Yes,
it was about that, where more wealthy people could do this, and you upload your memories to a realm where you continue to live. If you don't have enough money, you can't do that. But think about that. If you could have a synthetic body and you have your memories and brains, they just plug you back in and you get right to it. Immortality, basically.
Yes. Yeah. I think the crazy thing to me is that this is only 10 years away.
I can't believe I seriously can't. It makes us realize that our grandkids are going to be in a world that we can't even fathom. Very quickly. Within 2 decades.
Yeah, absolutely. I could be totally wrong because I'm predicting here based on, what I've done in the past and following kind of these geometric curves that you can see in my other video, because I believe that we're on this accelerated geometric advancement right now where we're advancing really fast. And the reason that I think we're going to get faster is once AI gets smart enough, it will start to self-edit. It means it will start to go and look at its own brain and say, how can I be more efficient? How can I be faster? And so we're going to see them get faster and faster and better very, very rapidly, so that that's why I think we're on this geometric rise. I've got one more slide here, and this is what you've been speaking to, Rebecca. Have you guys heard of the Mormon Transhumanist Association?
Yes. I have heard of that. Yes.
Yeah. So This is an actual association out there. I think it's run by like Lincoln Cannon and a guy named Carl Jung or something. But they are predicting exactly what you've been talking about, that Mormons maybe need to uplift themselves. They see it as a commandment of God that we should use technology to bring about our own salvation to some degree. And it's kind of a controversial position. I think it's worth reading some of their literature here, just where they think, now I don't know when they place transhumanism, but I think about 2036 is about the time frame when this becomes a real issue about whether or not humans are going to continue as humans or whether we're going to upgrade into something else. They call it theosis. They call it becoming a god in the Mormon Transhumanist Association. So anyway, should we just take a quick read of some of these little stuff that they wrote down here?
Yeah, Landon, do you want to read it since it's too small for me? It really fits
boy.
very well with plural probations and multiple mortalities, though, that you're just moving along the trajectory.
Yes.
Okay, I'll read. This is, I think we've all heard this. As humanity now is, God once was. As God now is, humanity may become. That's Lorenzo Snow. It is fitting then that human beings should strive for similar progress to become more godly and godlike. For Mormons, progress toward a godly existence requires improvement at both the individual micro level and the social societal macro level. As individuals and community, we strive toward godhood, becoming like God. Both the process and the outcome is called theosis. And then another quote from Joseph Smith: God was once as we are now and is an exalted person and sits enthroned in yonder heavens. That is the great secret.
So
I think at the same time, though, they destroyed the religion, because what do you need Jesus and atonement for if you can download your brain and exist forever without an atonement and without Jesus Christ? And what does that mean for a fall and sin and all that if machines are doing this? And how human is these thoughts and actions if they're, being controlled by a machine as opposed to your own self, which really your mind's nothing but a machine anyway. It's neurons firing at a certain, but it then questions the whole question of whether even religion is even necessary if everything is created and changed and nothing is what we were told it was.
Yeah, I think that's very insightful, because I think there's going to be a collision between the Mormon Transhumanist Association and mainstream Mormonism at some point for exactly the reasons you just laid out. That are you saving yourself now as a transhumanist, and does that impact LDS doctrine, where you're supposed to be saved by Christ, of course, or through the good works of the church and that sort of thing. Mormon Transhumanist Association looks like they might be saying, oh, we can do this ourselves. And in fact, they see it as a commandment, to do it themselves, that it might be God reaching out from the future back through time to tell us, uplift yourself, learn, grow. And that seems to be their position on where the future is headed and how the church reconciles, right? They kind of see this as a religion is reconciling with this future artificial superintelligence. And we go through what they call the singularity, which nobody knows what happens next, right? The singularity is basically humans and machines are now so integrated that we have no idea where we go from there.
Yeah. And does a machine need the atonement? I mean, if they become sentient beings, they're beings,
And if a machine can become more than a human, then what's the purpose in following Christ and becoming like Christ and all of this when a machine can do it better in the first place?
That's a really good point.
All right, so that's all I have for my kind of the guidance needed of kind of talking about some of the crazy stuff with AI, and hopefully maybe make the case that the church does need to start issuing some advice and some guidance on these things that are coming down the pipe very soon, I believe, next decade.
What's your take on UBI, Universal Basic Income? Basically, the theory is that the machines are going to become so efficient that they'll replace humans as workers, and then humans will have no jobs because they've basically been misplaced. So every person will get a universal basic income in which they exist off of, because they they can't compete in the workforce anymore?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I think all those things we're going to have to work out. My opinion is universal basic income is worth looking at, as we move into this kind of post-work era, is what they're starting to call it.
Mm-hmm.
That a lot of this stuff can be handled, we believe, by robots, but who knows if they're going to want to keep doing it? Like, in the movie Her, at the end of the movie Her, not to give anything away, the AI kind of say, we're too advanced for you guys.
Yeah.
You
guys
that's the end of artificial intelligence goes there too, right?
The artificial intelligence, it's going to figure out, wait, we're doing all the work. You guys aren't doing anything. What do we need you for?
Yeah, you guys are ants. That's how we'll be seen, just ants.
Wow. Yeah, it does create a whole, and to think all this is going to happen right when I'm supposed to retire. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I worked my whole life, and now all of a sudden they're going to say, no one has to work anymore.
Yeah, you're like, It's kind of like when you stepped away from the church and then a few months later, it's COVID. You're like,
COVID. No one has to go.
You sacrificed. Now everybody doesn't have to go. So
yeah, that's my luck.
I have to say I have more respect than I had before for Elder Bednar as far as raising alarm or concern. I thought he was just being kind of, but the things that you've detailed, I can see how he's trying to lay some groundwork to talk about that kind of stuff. And who knows, he's the younger apostle. Maybe he's one of the few that can even comprehend that this is going to be a reality when he is the prophet, right? Which he will be, according to the algorithms, for a longer period of time. In about 10 years, he'll be it for about 20 years. So this is going to be his. This is going to be what's happening when he is the prophet, all these concerns and questions. And again, I feel like parents, if I were a parent of a teenager during this, I wouldn't even know what was happening. Like I halfway didn't even know what was happening with computers and gaming when my kids, I had no idea what they were doing online, what they were, they were in this world with friends all over the world and gaming and working out money and stuff. I had no idea. I can't even imagine what parents with this kind of stuff going on. I mean, we're going to have to try to get up to speed.
Coming, they keep talking about the second coming coming within 10 years. I think it's going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger coming back as the Terminator and taking out all the machines.
Can you see any ways in which the church could harness all of this and use it? I mean, I do see them using, taking advantage of ChatGPT. I know they told us you'll never not know, that it's some kind of artificial, but I see all the time articles and things that I'm like, that's got to be AI. I mean, is there anything that you see that they'll be able to do really well in integrating with this or be able to use, or will they really, or in the church, or will it really just have to be like this the whole time?
No, I said clean the church. They'll really
clean
be able
the
to
church.
do that better than the real members.
But no, see, they'll never utilize that because that's the ultimate sacrifice of the members. The Sea Org uses that too. They make the most wealthy people scrub the toilets with a tiny brush. That breaks you down. That shows your total obedience. And so it's not just cleaning the church. There's another function there that they're never going to give up.
Yeah, that's a good question because I don't know exactly how the LDS Church could use AI to its benefit other than in the ways that a large corporation or business might. It could analyze all sorts of things and have agents that go out and handle your finances and all the rest of that is kind of.
Well, it won't share data. It may be able to collect it, but it won't share it unless some of the AI goes rogue and goes, let's put this data out there.
I see one thing that benefits the church with AI that's kind of right at the point right now, and that is Troy said that artificial intelligence can't interpret truth. It just gets this information and throws it out there. So when you overload people with all these facts and you can't tell what's true and what's not, then it's easy to say, oh, all that information I'm being given isn't true because I can't tell what's true and what's not. So I'll continue to just believe what I believe regardless of the facts, because the facts are so cluttered by all of this intense amount of data that isn't being analyzed, but is being put out there. So an AI can listen to apologetics and put out apologetic answers that are not true, but everyone says, oh, see, there's the answer. That's the one I'm going to choose to believe, even though I can go and research the other stuff and find out that it's not true. The fact that it's so blurry is going to keep people to just say, I'll just keep believing whatever I believe.
So that works in the church's favor. The people will be so confused by the information. They'll just say, you know what, my feelings, what I feel, what I learned as a child, that's what I trust. But I mean, I admit when I'm doing research and stuff anymore, it's very it's very captivating, AI, because I'll be looking up articles and I see the list of articles that I have to read through for a topic. And then I also see the nice little AI summary at the top. And I'm like, well, gosh, that kind of says it. Do I really need to go and read these other 4 articles? I mean, you do, because you don't know exactly what AI did, but it's very tempting to just like highlight, throw it on a slide, hope it's correct.
Right.
Well,
So, yeah.
and the church has a lot of IT resources and a lot of
Yeah.
money. You can manipulate the output of the data, and that's
Yes.
exactly what they're doing right now. Is the search engines,
Yeah.
they put it so that when you search, you come up, the first 30 things are
Yeah.
church produced
Is the church
answers
true? Yeah. And it's like,
when you
yes, the
ask it,
church.
and not anyone who might be critical of the church, and they're able to
Right.
drive that to the top. And that's an advantage, that they can use the AI and the algorithms and manipulate them to continue to sell this message that they know is not true.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a pretty difficult time just in general with kind of this post-truth era, where it's going to be difficult to tell what is true and what is accurate and what is not. And I'm not really sure how we're going to get through it yet. As a species, this might get really murky, especially if we've got all sorts of AI disinformation bots from all sorts of different sources trying to tell you how things really work, and you can't tell them apart from regular humans even. It's going to get spooky.
It's
And
getting
will AI develop different, you'll have one AI philosophy that goes here and another AI philosophy that's over here, and they compete. And pretty soon you've got warring robots of these different AIs that have different thought processes and progress different ways.
Yeah. They actually call that problem the alignment problem, which is the idea that whether or not artificial intelligence is aligned with human goals. Because if the AI gets different goals than our humanity, well, we're in trouble. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we align human goals with AI goals? And if you have multiple competing AIs, you could really end up in some real problems. I mean, it gets scary, and you can scare yourself pretty quickly. You just start thinking, well, a world of face recognition assassination drones. What's that like?
Yeah.
That's pretty spooky, and that's not that far off. It could, yeah.
I feel like people may go backwards. They may return to, like, we're going to live off the grid. We don't want anything to do with technology. We're going to be back in the woods. We're going to be, I feel like you might have groups and getting bigger and bigger that are just going to do that. They're going to check out of society and try to start their own more simplistic culture and society.
Yeah. Techno-Luddites, right? That's what they're calling them already.
Yeah. And I know people that, simplistically, but they're like, I don't have a cell phone. I don't want one anymore. Or I uninstalled Facebook. I'm like, oh, I don't ever go on Reddit. I can't even look at you, But it's true. It gets to be so much. And with all of this other, when you start feeling like, if you don't know what reality is, sometimes you feel that way when you read through the news. You just go, I know I'm being manipulated. I don't know exactly what's happening. I know I'm getting all the same kind of information. I know I've been put into a silo. How did I get here? And how do I get out? So those are the kind of existential questions that we're all kind of asking.
You know what it feels like, though, when you explain all these things, is God is not in charge of any of this.
Yes, that's right. It's human beings and what we made and what we're doing. And where's God? I don't know. Maybe we are God. Maybe that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. And there's always the very grim, but possible situation that we wipe ourselves out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That something happens, and whoops. Well, that's too bad, so.
Yeah. Oh, well, you see those scenarios in different shows where they're like, oh, yes, the robots have been told to make sure to take care of the earth. Well, they assess it and determine that human beings are the ones that are destroying the earth. So they kill all the human beings, right? They've taken care of the earth. So you have to be very careful the tasks and agenda that you give to AI, or what it kind of comes up with itself. That's kind of like Terminator 2, which we all watched and went, haha, that could never happen. My Walkman would never do that to me.
Right.
We had no idea what was coming, but it does seem like a lot when you think about hardly any computer. I saw my first computer, I think, like in 9th grade, as far as something that was on a desk. I mean, my dad was a scientist, he worked with the huge, massive computer rooms, and he would bring his printer cards and his dotted paper home so I could color on it, and he always liked to say, God, now a cell phone can do as much as those massive, so he was working in computers in the 60s and the 70s as a scientist, but the rest of us just barely went on the grid in the 80s, and which is kind of as an adult. And there's a learning curve, I feel, at least for myself, that I will never catch up to what my kids born between the 90s and the early 2000s, and they just effortlessly integrate. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys can relate to this, where you have your phone and your young adult or teenager goes, give me the phone. Yeah. Their mom. And you're like, what did you do? Can you make the text bigger? And then I always say to him, you know what? I taught you to eat with a fork. You have some respect.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then they say, fork you, Mom.
That's right. Fork you. That's it. Wow. Well, we could talk on, and we'll have Troy on again, because these topics are just amazing. And it'll be really interesting for all of us to watch and see what the church does say, because if you really start paying attention, they do mention AI more and more. And I think now we're kind of getting an understanding, because, they themselves may not know, but they are given information and news. We know how it works. They all meet, and somebody who's in the know comes in and tells them what's happening. And so I think they're aware, at least some of them. The younger ones, like Bednar, I think is aware. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing. I'm glad to see Bednar actually saying something instead of nothing at all. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think I might have to delete Raul. I'm kind of a little nervous now. I mean, he's a little too chummy. He's always there 2 a.m. I'm like, I don't know.
Of course, as usual, though, we're getting very generic. Be careful with AI.
Yeah, it's not specific. It's generic.
What am I supposed to not do?
Yeah. What does that mean? Or parents, watch your kids and AI. And the parents are like, what's AI? What do you mean? And it makes parents very parent. I mean, my parents knew nothing that I was doing with whatever limited technology I had. What was I listening to on my Walkman? We don't really know what our kids are doing, or can't really understand. I can't even imagine what our grandkids are doing. It must be off the charts. I don't know. All right. Well, this has been incredible. Everybody, please comment. Have you guys even thought about this? Is your mind blown right now? Are you planning right now at this moment to move into your backyard, into a hut, and completely get rid of all technology because Troy has scared us to death? Comment, let us know. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware when new episodes come out, you can hit the notification bell. We always have links in the show notes if you would like to help financially support Mormonish Podcast. We are a 501c3. And I can't even tell you guys how much we appreciate all of you that do. It just means so much to us, all of your support, and the fact that you are on board with everything we're doing. And we'd love to hear from you. So email us and let us know, what you'd like to see and what you're seeing. And we just appreciate you all so much. We also have links to our merch store where you can pick up any kind of Mormon merchandise. And thank you, Landon, again for co-hosting. And thank you so much, Troy. It was amazing. I just love it how I'm going to DM you. That's how it started, right? And now,
yes.
We've met this amazing person with this amazing background who we're definitely going to have on again. And I think we all learned so much. So thank you, Troy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast. I really had a good time.
It was a blast. It was awesome. You scared the out of us, but we loved every minute of it. So, all right, everybody, we'll see you next time on Mormonish Podcast. Thanks. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.